When I walked into my son's house carrying the birthday cake I had ordered from the bakery downtown, my daughter-in-law Victoria looked up from her phone and said with a cold smile, "Oh, Helen, you're here. I was hoping you'd forget." The word stung, but I forced a smile. It was my 70th birthday party, after all. My son James had invited me. This was supposed to be a celebration. "I brought cake," I said, holding up the box. "German chocolate, James's favorite." "Of course you did," Victoria said, not moving from the couch. Always trying to be the hero, always inserting yourself where you're not needed. I stood there in the entryway of what I thought was my son's house, holding a cake that suddenly felt too heavy. James came out of the kitchen, saw me, and his expression flickered with something guilt, maybe, or resignation. "Hi, Mom, happy birthday." "Thank you, sweetheart." I set the cake on the dining table, looking around. "Where is everyone?" "You said the party started at 6. Victoria laughed, a sharp sound that had no humor in it. "Party? Helen, there is no party. We told you 6, so you'd come over and we could finally have this conversation. If you want to know what happened next and how this story ends, please like this video and subscribe. Your support means everything. Thank you, let's continue." My blood went cold. What conversation? "The conversation about how you need to stop acting like you're part of this family," Victoria said, standing up now. "You're not. You're James's mother. That's it. And frankly, even that relationship needs some boundaries." I looked at James, my son, my only child. The boy I had raised alone after his father died when he was 6. The man I had put through medical school by working 70-hour weeks at my printing business. "James," I said quietly, "what is she talking about?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Mom, Victoria and I have been talking. We think it would be better if you gave us some space. You're always here, always involved. We need to build our own life. I only come when you invite me," I said, my voice shaking. I haven't been here uninvited in months. Not since Victoria told me I was being intrusive. "See?" Victoria pointed at me like I had just proved her point. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. The guilt trips, the victim mentality. You act like we're excluding you, but really, you're just too needy." Needy. I who had built a business from nothing. I who had raised a son alone. I who had asked for nothing from anyone for 70 years. Needy. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said carefully. "James, you called me. You invited me to my own birthday celebration. Because Victoria said we should do this in person," James admitted, finally looking at me. "We need you to understand that we're starting fresh. New chapter. And that chapter doesn't include family dinners every month, or phone calls every week, or you just showing up because you're lonely." Every word was a knife. I hadn't called him in 2 weeks because Victoria had told me I was calling too much. I hadn't visited in 3 months because she said I was hovering. I had pulled back, given them space, and now I was being told I was still too present. "You want me to." "What? Disappear?" "Don't be dramatic," Victoria said. "We want you to have your own life. Stop making James your whole world. It's unhealthy. Frankly, it's pathetic." Pathetic. At my own birthday gathering. In front of my son, who said nothing. "And another thing," Victoria continued, warming to her topic now. "We're planning to expand this house. Add a second story, maybe a pool. We need you to stop talking about leaving James money in your will. Whatever you have, keep it. We don't need charity from you. We'll build our own wealth." I stared at her. This woman who had married my son 3 years ago. This woman who drove a BMW I had helped finance. This woman who wore a diamond ring that had been my mother's, given to James to propose with. "I wasn't aware my estate was up for discussion," I said quietly. "It's not," James said quickly. "Victoria just means we're financially independent. We don't want you to feel obligated." "What your mother means," Victoria interrupted, "is that we don't want your money. We don't need you at all, actually. So you can stop using your will as leverage to stay involved in our lives." "I have never used my money as leverage," I said, my voice hardening. "Everything I've done for James, I've done out of love." "Love?" Victoria laughed again. "You call it love. I call it control. You paid for his medical school, so he feels guilty. You gave him down payment money for this house, so he feels obligated. You're always giving, 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 and then acting hurt when we don't worship you for it." "That's enough," I said. But it wasn't enough. She was just getting started. "You know what the problem is, Helen? You're useless now. You had a purpose when James was young. You were the provider, the parent, whatever, but he's an adult now. He doesn't need a mommy anymore. And instead of accepting that and building your own life, you cling to him like a drowning person. It's embarrassing. Useless. The word hung in the air like poison. I looked at James one more time, hoping, praying he would say something. Anything. Tell his wife she had gone too far. Defend me. Stand up for the woman who had given up everything to raise him. But he just stood there, looking at the floor. I think you should leave, Victoria said. This is our house, our space, and you're not welcome here anymore. We'll call you if we need you. Which, let's be honest, we probably won't. James, I whispered, please. I'm sorry, Mom, he said, still not looking at me. But Victoria's right. We need space. Maybe it's better if you don't come around for a while. I felt something break inside me. Not my heart that had been breaking slowly for 3 years, every time Victoria made a cutting comment that James ignored. This was something deeper. This was the final severing of an illusion I had been clinging to. The illusion that my son still loved me, that our relationship still mattered. I walked to the door, leaving the cake on the table. German chocolate, his favorite. Happy 70th birthday to me. And Helen? Victoria called after me. Lose our number. We'll contact you if we ever need you. Which again, we won't. I drove home in a daze. The house I had lived in alone for 15 years since selling my business felt emptier than ever. I walked through rooms filled with photos of James. James as a baby. James graduating high school. James in his white coat at his medical school graduation. Every photo a reminder of what I had sacrificed. The relationships I hadn't pursued because I was focused on raising him. The business opportunities I had turned down because I wanted to be home for dinner. The life I hadn't lived because I was busy making sure he had everything he needed. And now I was useless. I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. I didn't cry. I was past crying. Instead, I did what I had always done when faced with a problem. I took action. I pulled up the property records for James and Victoria's address, the house I had helped them buy with a $100,000 down payment gift 3 years ago. The house Victoria had just kicked me out of on my 70th birthday. According to the records, they didn't own it. They were renting it from a property management company called Sterling Holdings LLC. I kept digging. Sterling Holdings LLC was owned by a larger real estate investment firm. That firm had been in financial trouble recently, selling off properties to meet debt obligations. And there, in the recent sales listings, I found it. James and Victoria's house. On the market for $650,000. It had been listed for 2 weeks. I picked up my phone and called my financial advisor. Helen, Gerald said warmly. Happy birthday. How's the celebration? Gerald, I need to buy a house. Today if possible. And I need it done quietly. There was a pause. Are you feeling all right? I'm feeling perfectly clear. For the first time in 3 years actually. Can you help me or not? Of course. What's the property? I gave him the address. I heard him typing. This is your son's house, he said carefully. My son's rental house, I corrected, which I'm about to purchase. And Gerald, I want the sale done through a shell company. I don't want my name on any documents they might see. Can you arrange that? Helen, what's going on? I was called useless today, at my own birthday party, in a house I helped them afford. Now I'm going to teach them the cost of underestimating a woman who built a multi-million-dollar printing business from nothing. Gerald was quiet for a moment. I'll have the paperwork ready by tomorrow morning. How do you want to structure the purchase? All cash. I'll take it from my liquid investments. And Gerald? I want to close within a week. Done. Helen? Yes? I've known you for 20 years. I've never heard you sound like this. That's because for 20 years, I've been a mother first. Today, I remembered I'm a businesswoman first. And businesswomen don't let anyone call them useless without consequences. After I hung up, I walked through my house looking at it with new eyes. The home I had bought when James was in high school, paid off by age 55 through smart business decisions and careful saving. The house I had considered leaving to James in my will. Not anymore. I pulled out my estate planning documents and made a note to call my lawyer in the morning. Everything was going to change. My will, my beneficiaries, my entire relationship with my son. He had chosen his wife over his mother. Fine, he was an adult. He could make that choice. But choices have consequences. And Victoria was about to learn that calling someone useless only works if they actually are useless. I was many things: a successful business owner, a property owner, a woman with resources and intelligence, and a lifetime of experience fighting my way to the top. But useless? Never. My phone buzzed. A text from James. "Mom, I'm sorry about how that went, but we really do need space. Please respect that." I deleted the message without responding. Then I opened my laptop and started researching tenant rights in our state. Eviction procedures, rent increase regulations, lease termination clauses. I had 7 days to close on the house. And then James and Victoria were going to learn exactly how much power a useless old woman could wield when she stopped asking for love and started demanding respect. Monday morning at 8 a.m., I met Gerald at his office. He had the purchase documents ready. "The seller is motivated," he explained. "Sterling Holdings is liquidating assets to cover debt. They're accepting your cash offer of $650,000 as is. No inspection, no contingencies. We can close by Friday." "Perfect." "And the shell company?" "Evergreen Property Management LLC. Registered in Delaware, completely separate from your personal holdings. Your name appears nowhere on any public documents. As far as anyone can tell, it's just another faceless real estate investment company." "Good. And the current tenants?" Gerald pulled out another folder. James and Victoria signed a month-to-month lease 18 months ago when Sterling bought the property from the previous owner. They're paying $2,800 per month, well below market value for that neighborhood, which is now running about $4,200 for comparable properties. "Month to month," I repeated. "That means I can terminate their lease with 30 days' notice." "Technically, yes. But Helen, are you sure about this? This is your son. My son who called me useless. My son who stood by while his wife humiliated me. My son who told me to lose his number." I met Gerald's eyes. "I'm sure. What's the plan?" "First, I close on the house. Then I introduce myself as their new landlord. Then we'll see if they still think I'm useless." The rest of Monday was spent in meetings. My estate lawyer, updating my will. My financial advisor, restructuring my investments. My business attorney, making sure every document was airtight. By Tuesday, I had removed James from my will entirely. My estate, worth approximately $4.2 million after selling my printing business 5 years ago, would now go to charity. Women's business development programs, scholarships for single mothers, organizations that helped women rebuild after divorce or loss. My son would get nothing. Wednesday afternoon, James called. I let it go to voicemail. "Mom, it's me. Victoria feels bad about how things went on your birthday. Maybe we overreacted. Could you call me back? We should talk." I didn't call back. Instead, I drove past their house, my house, and sat in my car for a few minutes, looking at it. The yard that needed mowing. The flower beds I had planted 2 years ago when I was still welcome. The front door where Victoria had essentially told me I was worthless. In 4 days, that door would be mine. Thursday morning, Gerald called. "We have a problem." My heart sank. What kind of problem? Sterling Holdings accepted another offer. Higher than yours. $680,000. Who? I can't get that information yet, but the real estate agent mentioned it was a young couple, very motivated, willing to pay cash. A young couple. My stomach turned. "Get me a name." An hour later, Gerald called back. "Helen, the other offer is from James and Victoria." I actually laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound. They're trying to buy the house they're currently renting. It appears so. And their offer is $30,000 higher than yours. Where are they getting that kind of money? James is a resident. Victoria works part-time in marketing. They shouldn't have $680,000 in cash. I did some digging. They're using your $100,000 down payment gift as part of their funding. Plus, they took out loans. They must have been planning this purchase for a while. They had been planning to buy the house, which meant when Victoria kicked me out, she already knew they were going to own it. She was establishing that I wasn't welcome in their home even before it was legally theirs. "Counteroffer," I said. $700,000, all cash, close in 3 days. "Helen, that's $50,000 over asking." "I don't care, I want that house." By Thursday evening, Sterling Holdings had accepted my higher offer. James and Victoria's bid was rejected. Friday morning at 10 a.m., I sat in the title company office and signed the papers. At 10:47 a.m., I became the legal owner of the house my son was living in. At 11 a.m., I drove to their house, my house, and knocked on the door. Victoria answered, wearing yoga pants and an annoyed expression. "Helen, I thought we were clear about boundaries." "I'm not here as James's mother," I said calmly. "I'm here as your landlord." Her face went blank. "What? I purchased this house. The sale closed an hour ago. I own it, which makes you my tenants." I watched the color drain from her face. "That's not possible. We were buying this house. We had an offer in." "You had an offer. It was rejected in favor of a higher bid." "Mine." "You can't do this," she said, but her voice had lost its confidence. James. My son came to the door, still in his scrubs from his hospital shift. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I just explained to Victoria. "I purchased this house. As of this morning, I'm your landlord." James's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, and finally, understanding. "You bought our house? Why would you do that? You told me to stay out of your life." "I am. This is purely business. I'm a property owner. Your tenants. Our personal relationship is separate." "This is insane," Victoria said, finding her voice again. "You did this out of spite, because of what I said at your birthday." "I did this because it was a good investment," I replied coolly. "The property was undervalued. You were paying below market rent, and the previous owner was motivated to sell quickly. It made financial sense." "Mom, you can't be serious," James said. "This is our home." "No, it's my property. You live here. There's a difference. And speaking of which, I need to discuss your lease terms." I pulled out a folder from my bag. "Your current lease is month to month at $2,800 per month. The market rate for comparable properties in this neighborhood is $4,200. I'm willing to offer you a new one-year lease at $4,000 per month. That's still below market value. Consider it a courtesy." "4,000?" Victoria's voice went shrill. "That's a 43% increase. It's a correction to market rate. You've been paying below value for 18 months. I'm actually being generous." "We can't afford $4,000 a month," James said quietly. "Then I suggest you find somewhere more affordable. If you choose not to sign the new lease, your current month-to-month lease will be terminated with 30 days' notice. That's standard procedure." "You're evicting us?" James looked at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he'd never really known who I was beyond Mom who gives me money. "I'm offering you market rate rent. If you can't afford it, that's not my problem. Welcome to being an adult with real expenses. You wanted independence from me? Here it is." Victoria stepped forward, her face twisted with rage. "You bitter old bitch. This is because you're alone and miserable, and you can't stand that James has moved on with his life. This is because I'm a property owner making business decisions," I corrected. "And Miss Morrison, I should mention that part of the new lease includes a strict noise policy and a no harassment clause. Any verbal abuse toward the landlord will be grounds for immediate lease termination, so I suggest you choose your next words carefully." James put his hand on Victoria's arm. "Mom, please? We were trying to buy this house. We've been saving for 2 years. You just destroyed our plan." "You destroyed our relationship," I replied. "At my birthday party, you told me I was useless, that I should lose your number, that you didn't need me. Remember? I said we needed space. You said a lot of things, James, and I heard all of them. So here's what's going to happen. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. Sign the new lease at $4,000 per month, or I'll serve you a 30-day notice to vacate. Your choice." I handed James the folder. "The lease agreement is inside. I'll need it signed and returned by noon tomorrow." I turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing. I had the property inspected yesterday. The previous owner deferred some maintenance. I'll be making repairs starting next month. The contractors will need access. I'll give you 24 hours notice as required by law, but access is non-negotiable. It's in the lease." "You can't do this," Victoria said again, but she sounded less certain now. "I already did it. Welcome to the real world, where actions have consequences. You wanted me out of your life? Congratulations, I'm out. But I'm also your landlord. And unlike a mother, a landlord doesn't give second chances." I walked back to my car, my hands steady, my head high. As I drove away, I could see them in my rearview mirror, standing in the doorway of my house, looking shocked and angry and helpless. Good. Let them feel what I felt when they called me useless. That evening, my phone exploded with messages. James. Mom, please, we need to talk. This is crazy. James. We can't afford $4,000 a month. You know that. James. Is this really what you want? To be our landlord instead of my mother? James. Call me back, please. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in my living room, looking at the documents from the closing. My name well, my company's name on the deed, my property, my asset, my power. At 9 p.m., Victoria called from James's phone. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. What? I said, not bothering with pleasantries. You're a monster, Victoria hissed. You're doing this to punish us, to control us, to force us to beg. I'm doing this because you told me I was useless. You wanted to see what I was capable of when I stopped being a mother and started being a businesswoman. Well, here it is. We'll fight this. We'll find a lawyer. You can't just... I can. And I did. Everything I've done is legal. I made a legitimate real estate purchase. I'm offering you a market rate lease. If you don't like it, you're free to move. That's how rentals work. James will never forgive you for this. James already made it clear he doesn't need me in his life. So what exactly am I losing? She hung up on me. At 11 p.m., my phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. I answered anyway. Mrs. Patterson? A woman's voice. My name is Jennifer Hartley. I'm an attorney. Victoria Morrison called me this evening about a landlord dispute. There's no dispute, I said calmly. I bought a property. I offered my tenants a new lease. They haven't decided yet. Mrs. Patterson, I've reviewed the situation, and I need to inform you that retaliatory eviction is illegal in this state. If you're raising their rent or threatening eviction because of a personal dispute, Ms. Hartley, I purchased the property at fair market value in an arm's-length transaction. I'm offering rent that's still below comparable properties in the neighborhood. My personal relationship with the tenants is irrelevant to the business transaction. I suggest you review the actual law before threatening me. There was a pause. Mrs. Patterson, I'm simply advising you that if this goes to court, then I'll see you there. I have excellent attorneys, and unlike your clients, I have the financial resources to litigate this for as long as necessary. Now, is there anything else? She hung up too. I sat in the silence of my house, feeling something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Power, control, the satisfaction of being underestimated and then proving everyone wrong. They had called me useless. They had kicked me out of their house on my birthday. They had told me to disappear from their lives. Now they would learn what it meant to actually need me. And this time, I wouldn't be there as a mother. I'd be there as a landlord who didn't forget insults and didn't give free passes. Saturday morning, at 11:58 a.m., 2 minutes before my deadline, James showed up at my door with the signed lease agreement. His eyes were red. He hadn't slept. We signed it, he said quietly. $4,000 a month, 1-year lease. I took the papers, reviewed them quickly. Everything was in order. I pulled out my copy and handed it to him. Rent is due on the 1st of each month. Late fees apply after the 5th. The lease terms are all outlined. Welcome to being my tenant. Mom, don't do this. Please. This isn't who you are. You're right, I said, meeting his eyes. The woman who would accept being called useless? That's not who I am. You're finally meeting the real me. The woman who built a business from nothing. The woman who survived your father's death and raised you alone. The woman who doesn't need anyone's approval to know her worth. I'm sorry, he whispered, for everything Victoria said, for not defending you. I'm sure you are. Sorry that I bought your house. Sorry that I'm charging you market rent. Sorry that I'm not just accepting your apology and going back to being the doormat mother you could call when you needed something. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Goodbye, James. I'll see you on the 1st when rent is due. I closed the door in his face, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt free. The 1st of the month arrived. Rent was due. At 11:45 p.m. on the 31st, 15 minutes before the late fee would kick in, the payment came through. Exactly $4,000, not a penny more, no note, no communication. I looked at the transaction on my phone and felt a cold satisfaction. They had waited until the last possible moment, hoping I would call and offer some kind of mother's discount, but I hadn't called. And they had paid. Good. They were learning. The second week of the month, I sent them the required 24-hour notice. Contractors would be arriving to inspect the roof, the HVAC system, and the plumbing. All legitimate maintenance that had been deferred by the previous owner. Victoria texted back immediately, "This is harassment. You're doing this on purpose." I replied with the exact language from the lease. Per Section 7.3, landlord reserves the right to inspect and maintain the property with 24 hours written notice. This is within the lease terms you signed. She didn't respond. The contractors arrived the next morning at 8 a.m. I met them there, using my key to let them in. James had already left for the hospital. Victoria was in the kitchen in her bathrobe, her hair a mess, her face pale with exhaustion. "Good morning," I said pleasantly. "The contractors need about 3 hours. I'll be here to supervise." "You're staying?" she asked, her voice tight. "It's my property. I have every right to be present during maintenance." I sat in their my living room, while the contractors worked. I noticed things I hadn't seen on my previous visits. The walls needed paint. The carpet in the hallway was worn. The kitchen cabinets were outdated. I made notes. Victoria stayed in the bedroom with the door closed. I could hear her on the phone, her voice muffled but angry. When the contractors finished, the news wasn't good. The HVAC system was 20 years old and needed replacing. The roof had minor leaks that would become major problems in the next heavy rain. The plumbing had sediment buildup that required a full flush of the system. Total repairs, approximately $35,000. I authorized all of it. "When will the work start?" Victoria emerged from the bedroom, her arms crossed. "Next week. The HVAC replacement alone will take 3 days. You'll need to be out of the house during that time for safety reasons." "Where are we supposed to go?" "That's not my concern. The lease stipulates that you must allow access for major repairs. I'm giving you a week's notice instead of the required 24 hours. I'm being generous." "Generous," she repeated bitterly. "You're trying to drive us out. I'm maintaining my investment. These repairs are necessary whether you live here or not. In fact, once they're complete, the property value will increase substantially. You should be grateful I'm not raising the rent to reflect that." Her face went white. "You wouldn't. The current lease is for 1 year. After that, we'll reassess market rates. I suggest you start saving." That evening, James called. I considered not answering, but curiosity won. "Mom, please. Victoria is having panic attacks. She can't sleep. This is too much. She's having panic attacks because she's facing real financial pressure for the first time in her entitled life. That's called growing up. We can't afford a hotel for 3 days on top of the rent we just paid. Then stay with friends, or Victoria's parents. You have options." "Mom." "James, I told you. I'm not your mother in this transaction. I'm your landlord. You signed a lease. I'm following it. If you have issues with the terms, you should have read them more carefully before signing. You're really going to do this? Make us homeless for 3 days? I'm having necessary repairs done. You're not homeless. You simply need to make arrangements." Again, welcome to adulthood. I hung up before he could respond. The repairs began the following Tuesday. I drove by the house at 9 a.m. to ensure the contractors had access. James's car was gone. Victoria's car was gone. The house was empty. Good. They were learning to follow the rules. By Friday, the repairs were complete. The house had a new HVAC system, a patched roof, and clean plumbing. I walked through with my contractor, inspecting every detail. "This place will be solid for another 20 years, he said. "Great investment. Thank you. Send me the final invoice, $37,400. I paid it immediately from the Property LLC account. James and Victoria moved back in that weekend. I knew because I drove by and saw their cars in the driveway. I didn't hear from them for 2 weeks. No calls, no texts, just silence. Then, at 11 p.m. on a Sunday night, my phone rang. "James. Mom, we need to talk. Can you come over tomorrow? I don't make house calls unless there's a maintenance emergency. Is something broken?" "No, but..." "Then communicate via the property management email I gave you. That's what it's for. Mom, please, just 30 minutes. I'm asking you as your son, not as your tenant." Something in his voice made me pause. Desperation. real desperation. Fine, tomorrow at 6 p.m., 30 minutes. When I arrived the next evening, James answered the door. His face was drawn. He'd lost weight. "Thanks for coming," he said quietly. I walked into the living room. Victoria was there, sitting on the couch, her arms wrapped around herself. She looked worse than James, dark circles under her eyes. Her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. "What's this about?" I asked, remaining standing. James and Victoria exchanged a look. He nodded at her. "I'm pregnant," Victoria said, not meeting my eyes. 8 weeks. The words hung in the air. I felt something twist in my chest, joy, pain, anger, all mixed together. My grandchild, James's baby, the family I thought I'd never be part of again. "Congratulations," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "We can't afford this," James said. "The rent, the medical bills, the baby expenses. Mom, we're drowning." Victoria had to quit her job because she's too sick to work. "I'm a resident. I make $65,000 a year. After taxes, after rent, after everything else, we have nothing left." "Then you need to make different choices. Move somewhere cheaper. Get a roommate. Figure it out." "We can't break the lease without penalty," Victoria said, her voice small. "You made sure of that." "I made sure you had a standard lease agreement, yes." "Mom, please," James begged. "I'm asking you to reduce the rent, just for a year, until the baby is born and Victoria can go back to work. Please." I looked at my son, at the desperation in his eyes, at his wife, pregnant with my grandchild, looking defeated and scared. This was what I wanted, wasn't it? For them to need me, to beg, to understand what they'd thrown away when they called me useless. "No," I said. "What?" James looked like I'd slapped him. "You signed a 1-year lease at $4,000 per month. That's the rate. I'm not reducing it. Mom, we have a baby coming. Your grandchild. Doesn't that matter to you? It matters that you're going to be parents. It matters that a child is entering this world. But that doesn't change the fact that you signed a legal contract. Actions have consequences. You wanted to be independent from me? Here's your chance to prove you can handle it." Victoria started crying. "You're going to let your grandchild be born into financial stress? What kind of grandmother are you?" "I'm not a grandmother yet. Right now, I'm your landlord. And I'm teaching both of you a lesson that clearly no one else ever taught you. You don't get to treat people like garbage and then expect them to save you when life gets hard." "We said we were sorry," James said desperately. "No, you didn't. You said Victoria felt bad. You said maybe you overreacted. You never actually apologized. You never acknowledged how deeply you hurt me. You just wanted me to get over it and go back to being the mother who fixes everything. I'm apologizing now. I'm sorry. We were wrong. We were cruel. Is that what you want to hear? I want you to mean it. But more than that, I want you to understand something fundamental. You don't get to kick someone out of your life and then pull them back in when you need something. That's not how relationships work. That's manipulation." "So what?" Victoria stood up, her face red and tear-streaked. "You're just going to abandon your grandchild? Make us struggle? Hope we fail?" "I'm not making you struggle. Your choices are making you struggle. You spent years saving to buy a house. Where did that money go?" Silence. "That's what I thought," I said. "You spent it. On cars, on vacations, on lifestyle. And now you have nothing saved for a baby. That's not my fault. That's your poor planning." "We thought we'd be buying this house," James said quietly. "We thought we'd have equity. We thought..." "You thought wrong. And now you're facing the reality of your decisions." I walked toward the door, then turned back. "I'll give you one piece of advice. Victoria can apply for WIC. James, you can pick up extra shifts. There are programs for low-income families. Resources. You're not helpless. You're just used to taking the easy path. Time to learn to work hard." "Wait," Victoria called out. "What if we move out? Break the lease? Just let us go." "The lease break fee is 3 months' rent, $12,000. Due immediately upon vacating. It's in the contract. We don't have $12,000. Then I suggest you honor the lease. You have 10 more months. Figure it out." I left them standing there, Victoria crying, James looking broken. As I drove home, my hands shook on the steering wheel. My grandchild, a baby. The future I had dreamed about for years. And I had just walked away from it. But I couldn't back down. Not now. Because if I gave in, they would learn nothing. They would go right back to treating me like an ATM, only calling when they needed something, pushing me away when they didn't. I pulled over on the side of the road and cried. For the first time since my birthday party, I let myself cry. For the grandchild I might never know. For the son I'd lost. For the relationship that was broken beyond repair. But I didn't turn back. When I got home, I opened my laptop and transferred $50,000 to a new savings account. Not for James, not for Victoria, for my grandchild. When the baby turned 18, they would get the money, not before. Not through their parents. Directly to them, with a letter explaining why. Your parents kicked me out of their life when I was 70 years old, I would write. They called me useless, and when they needed help, I refused because I was teaching them that people are not ATMs. I hope you'll understand. I hope you'll learn from their mistakes. And I hope you'll know that I loved you from the moment I learned you existed, even if I couldn't be the grandmother I wanted to be. I set up the automatic monthly deposits. $500 a month for 18 years. My grandchild would graduate high school with $108,000 waiting for them. It wasn't the same as being present, but it was something. A legacy, a lesson, a promise that someone had cared, even from a distance. The next morning, I woke up to an email from Victoria's parents. Helen, we heard about the situation. What you're doing is unconscionable. Victoria is pregnant and stressed. You're endangering your grandchild with this vindictive behavior. We're asking you to reconsider. Family should support family. I wrote back, family should respect family. Your daughter called me useless and kicked me out of her home on my birthday. I made a business decision to purchase property. The two things are separate. If you're concerned about Victoria's well-being, I suggest you support her financially. That's what family does, according to you. They didn't respond. Week 4 of their tenancy arrived. The rent came through on time, $4,000. Every penny of it probably hurt to pay. Good. Maybe pain was the only teacher that worked for some people. Maybe my grandchild would grow up in a home where their parents finally understood that you can't treat people like garbage and expect them to smile and take it. And maybe, years from now, when that child opened their college fund and read my letter, they would understand that sometimes love means letting people face the consequences of their choices, even when it breaks your heart to do it. 3 months into the lease, I received an email through the property management system at 2 a.m. We need to talk about reducing the rent. Victoria's pregnancy is high risk. She's been hospitalized twice. The medical bills are overwhelming. We're drowning. Please. It was from James. I could picture him, sitting at his laptop in the middle of the night, exhausted from his hospital shifts, desperate enough to beg. I didn't respond. The next day, Victoria's mother, Patricia, called me directly. Helen, we need to have a conversation woman to woman. I don't see what there is to discuss. My daughter is 17 weeks pregnant with your grandchild. She's been diagnosed with preeclampsia. She's on bed rest, and you're charging them rent they can't afford while she can't work. How can you sleep at night? The same way I slept after your daughter kicked me out of her house on my 70th birthday and called me useless. Quite peacefully, actually. That was wrong. Victoria knows that now. She's apologized. No, she hasn't. Not to me. Not genuinely. She's asked for reduced rent. That's not an apology. That's negotiation. She's scared, Helen. Scared for her baby. Scared they're going to lose their home. Have you no compassion? I have plenty of compassion. I also have boundaries. Your daughter spent years making me feel worthless. I'm simply showing her what life looks like when she doesn't have me as a safety net. You're punishing a pregnant woman. I'm enforcing a lease agreement. The pregnancy doesn't change the contract. If they can't afford the rent, they have options. They can move. They can find roommates. They can ask their own families for help. Oh wait, they did ask you, didn't they? And what did you say? Silence. That's what I thought, I said. You want me to sacrifice my boundaries so you don't have to help your own daughter. Goodbye, Patricia. I hung up, but her words haunted me. 17 weeks, high-risk pregnancy, bed rest. I drove by the house that afternoon. Victoria's car was there. So was James's. He must have taken time off. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, my hand on my phone, ready to call, ready to say I'd reduce the rent, ready to be the grandmother, the mother, the person who fixed everything. Then I remembered Victoria's face at my birthday party. You're useless. Get out. I drove home. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the baby, my grandchild, growing inside a woman who hated me. In a situation I had the power to ease, but was choosing not to. Was I being strong, or was I being cruel? At 3 a.m., I called my therapist's emergency line. "Helen," Dr. Chen answered. "What's wrong?" I told her everything. The pregnancy, the high-risk diagnosis, the desperate pleas, my refusal to help. "Do you think you're wrong?" she asked when I finished. "I think I'm hurting. And I don't know if I'm teaching them a lesson or just punishing them because I can. What would forgiving them look like? Reducing the rent, helping with medical bills, being the grandmother I want to be. And what would maintaining boundaries look like? What I'm doing now, keeping the business relationship separate from the personal one, refusing to be manipulated by their crisis. Can I ask you something, Helen? If you reduce the rent, will they respect you more? Or will they just learn that if they create enough of an emergency, you'll always give in?" I didn't have an answer. "Here's what I know," Dr. Chen continued. "You're not responsible for their financial planning. You're not responsible for how they spent their savings instead of keeping an emergency fund. You're not even responsible for easing their stress during the pregnancy. You're responsible for protecting your own emotional well-being. And if that means enforcing boundaries, even when it's hard, then that's what it means. But what about the baby? The baby will be fine. They have options. They're choosing not to use them because they want you to be their option. There's a difference. After we hung up, I made a decision. I would not reduce the rent, but I would do something else." The next morning, I called the hospital where Victoria had been admitted. I spoke to the billing department. "I'd like to make an anonymous payment toward a patient's account. Victoria Morrison. We can accept that payment, but the patient will be notified of the credit." "That's fine. Just don't include my name." I paid $10,000 toward her medical bills. Not enough to cover everything, but enough to ease the immediate pressure. It wasn't for them. It was for the baby. My grandchild didn't deserve to be born into debt because of their parents' poor choices. 2 days later, James called. "Mom, did you pay Victoria's hospital bill?" "I don't know what you're talking about. Someone made a $10,000 anonymous payment." "The only person who would do that is you. If it was anonymous, then you don't know who it was. Maybe you have other people in your life who care about you." "Mom, the rent is still due on the 1st. Don't be late." I hung up, but something had shifted. I had found a way to help without rewarding their behavior, to support my grandchild without giving in to their manipulation. Month 4. The rent arrived on time. $4,000. I noticed they had started paying on the 1st now, not the last minute. Progress. Month 5. Victoria was 22 weeks pregnant. I drove by sometimes, late at night, when I knew they couldn't see me, watching the lights in the windows, wondering how she was feeling, wondering if the baby was okay. I made another anonymous payment to the hospital. $5,000 this time. Month 6. James sent an email through the property management system. "We're having a boy. We're naming him Robert, after Dad. I thought you should know. Robert, my husband's name. My son was naming his child after his father." I cried for an hour. Then I transferred another $10,000 to the college fund. Robert would have $80,000 waiting for him by the time he turned 18. But I didn't respond to James's email. Month 7. Victoria was 29 weeks. I got a call from Patricia again. "Helen, Victoria's in the hospital. She went into early labor. They're trying to stop it. The baby needs to stay in longer. James is a mess. Please, whatever's between you, can't you just be there for them?" "Which hospital?" "St. Mary's, room 412. I hung up and stared at my phone. Go to the hospital? Show up and pretend everything was fine? Or stay away and maintain the boundaries I'd worked so hard to establish? I drove to St. Mary's, but I didn't go to room 412. Instead, I went to the NICU nursing station. "I'd like to make a donation," I told the head nurse. "Anonymous. For any family with a premature baby who can't afford the NICU fees." "That's very generous. How much?" $50,000. "Set it up as a fund. Use it as needed. If Robert was born premature, if he needed the NICU, the money would be there. Not just for him, for any baby who needed it. It was the best I could do without crossing my own boundaries." I left the hospital without going upstairs. 3 days later, the crisis passed. Victoria's labor stopped. The baby was okay. James sent another email. "Thank you for the NICU donation. I know it was you. "Mom, please. Can we talk?" I responded this time. "I'm glad Victoria and the baby are okay. The rent is due in 5 days." Month 8. Victoria was 33 weeks. I saw her for the first time in months at the grocery store. She was in the produce section, moving slowly, one hand on her enormous belly. Our eyes met across the vegetables. She looked like she was going to say something. I waited. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "For everything, for the things I said, for how I treated you. You didn't deserve it." "No, I didn't. I know you've been helping. The hospital payments, the NICU fund, James told me. Those weren't for you. Those were for Robert." "I know, but thank you anyway." She turned to leave, then looked back. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to be part of his life, but I want you to know that I understand now. What it feels like to be powerless, to need help and not have it, to realize you burned bridges you can't rebuild." "Good," I said. "Then maybe you've learned something." I watched her walk away, slowly, carefully, carrying my grandchild. Part of me wanted to run after her, to say it was okay, to say I'd reduce the rent and be the grandmother and fix everything. But I didn't, because she needed to finish learning this lesson. Month 9. Victoria was 37 weeks. The baby was due in 3 weeks. The rent came through on time. They had paid every month without fail. $36,000 they had given me over 9 months. Money they desperately needed, money that hurt them to pay. I looked at my account balance. I hadn't touched any of it. It sat there, separate from my other funds, like a test I was giving myself. Could I keep it? Could I actually take $36,000 from my struggling son and pregnant daughter-in-law and feel okay about it? The answer surprised me. Yes, I could. Because it wasn't about the money. It had never been about the money. It was about them understanding that you don't get to treat people like they're worthless and then expect them to save you when life gets hard. And they were learning. Slowly. Painfully. But they were learning. 2 weeks before the due date, James showed up at my door at 10 p.m. "I need to say something," he said when I opened the door. "And I need you to hear it." I stepped aside and let him in. We sat in my living room, the same room where I had planned the purchase of his house 9 months ago. "I've been a terrible son," he said, "not just at your birthday party. For years, I let Victoria treat you badly because it was easier than standing up to her. I took your generosity for granted. I acted like you owed me things because you're my mother. And then when you stopped giving me what I wanted, I called that cruel instead of calling my own behavior selfish." I stayed silent, letting him continue. "These last 9 months have been hell," he admitted. "The financial stress, the pregnancy complications, the fear. And you know what the worst part was? Realizing that I did this to myself. That if I had just respected you, loved you, appreciated you, none of this would have happened. You would have been there for us. But I destroyed that relationship. I burned it down. And now I'm watching Victoria struggle, watching my son about to be born, and I'm realizing he's never going to know his grandmother because I'm an idiot who didn't protect the one person who always protected me." "You're right," I said simply, "about all of it. Can I fix this? Is there any way to fix this?" I looked at my son, at the man he'd become. Not the boy I'd raised, but someone who was finally understanding consequences. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But James, fixing it doesn't mean I reduce the rent or pretend the last year didn't happen. Fixing it means you become someone different, someone who respects boundaries, someone who doesn't call his mother only when he needs something." "I'll do that, I promise." "I've heard your promises before." "I know, and I'll spend however long it takes proving I mean it this time." After he left, I sat in the dark living room and wondered if people really could change. I'd find out soon enough. Robert was coming, and everything was about to change again. The call came at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. "Mom," James's voice was shaking. "Victoria's water broke. We're at the hospital. The baby's coming." I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. "How far apart are the contractions?" 5 minutes. "They're admitting her now." "Mom, I know I don't have the right to ask, but I'll be there in 20 minutes. I dressed quickly, my hands trembling. This was it. My grandson was being born. Despite everything, despite the hurt and the boundaries and the cold distance, I couldn't stay away. Not for this. The hospital parking lot was empty at 4 a.m. I took the elevator to the maternity ward, my stomach churning with a mixture of fear and anticipation. James was in the waiting room, still in his scrubs from the night shift he'd just finished. When he saw me, his face crumpled. "You came." "Of course I came. He's my grandson. I didn't think you would. After everything, where's Victoria?" "Room 308. They're checking her now. It's going to be a while. First babies take time." We sat in the uncomfortable plastic chairs, surrounded by the fluorescent lighting and antiseptic smell of the hospital. The same hospital where James worked, where I had come for the NICU donation months ago. "Mom, about the rent." "Not now, James. Today isn't about that. But I need you to know. We've been saving. Every extra dollar. Victoria's been doing freelance work from bed. We've saved almost $8,000. When the lease is up in 3 months, we're going to find somewhere cheaper. We'll pay the last 3 months and move out. We won't fight it." I looked at him, at the exhaustion in his eyes, the defeat in his posture. 9 months of struggling had aged him 5 years. "You don't have to move," I heard myself say. He looked at me sharply. "What?" "The rent. It's staying at $4,000. But I'll offer you a lease renewal. Another year." "Why?" "Because you've paid every month on time. Because you've maintained the property. Because that's what a reasonable landlord does for good tenants." "Mom, I'm not doing this for you, James. I'm doing it because it's the right business decision. Robert deserves stability. Moving a newborn is stressful. This way, you can stay." Before he could respond, a nurse came out. "Mr. Patterson, your wife is asking for you." James stood, then turned back to me. "Will you come? She wants to see you." I followed him down the hall to room 308. Victoria was in the bed, her face pale and sweaty, her hand gripping the bed rail. When she saw me, tears started running down her face. "Helen, you came. I'm here. I don't deserve it. After everything I said to you." Another contraction hit, cutting off her words. I moved to the other side of the bed, taking her hand without thinking. "Breathe," I said automatically, falling into the rhythm I'd learned when James was born 33 years ago. "In through your nose, out through your mouth." She squeezed my hand so hard I thought bones might break, but I didn't pull away. The labor lasted 14 hours. I stayed the entire time, fetching ice chips, coaching breathing, letting Victoria squeeze my hand until it went numb. James stayed by her head, holding her, whispering encouragement. I watched them together and saw something I hadn't seen before. Real love, partnership. They were facing this together, struggling but united. At 5:52 p.m., Robert James Patterson entered the world. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, 20 inches long. Perfect. They placed him in Victoria's arms, and she looked down at him with such pure love that I had to look away. My chest hurt with the weight of everything I was feeling. "Helen," Victoria said softly, "do you want to hold him?" I moved closer. Victoria carefully transferred the tiny bundle into my arms, and I looked down at my grandson for the first time. He had James's nose, my husband's eyes, a shock of dark hair. He was perfect, absolutely perfect. "Hello, Robert," I whispered. "I'm your grandmother, and I have been waiting for you." He opened his eyes and looked at me, really looked at me, and something in my chest that had been frozen for 9 months finally cracked open. This was what mattered. Not the rent, not the revenge, not the boundaries or the lessons or the hurt. This tiny person who was part of me, part of James, part of a future I could still be included in if I chose to be. "He's beautiful," I said, tears running down my face. "He's perfect." "Do you want to stay?" Victoria asked, "while they clean him up and settle us in a room?" "James needs to sleep, and I don't want to be alone." "I'll stay." James left to get rest after being awake for 36 hours. The nurses took Robert for his measurements and tests. Victoria and I were left alone in the room. "Helen, I need to say something," Victoria started. "And I need to say it now, before I lose my nerve." "All right. I was jealous of you." The words came out in a rush. From the moment I met James, I was jealous. He talked about you constantly, about how strong you were, how you raised him alone, how you built a business from nothing, and I felt like I could never measure up, like no matter what I achieved, he would always love you more. I stayed silent, letting her continue. "So I tried to push you out, to make you seem less important, to create distance so he would choose me over you. And that night at your birthday, I thought I'd won. I thought I'd finally gotten you out of our lives." "You did," I said quietly. "You got exactly what you wanted." "No, I didn't. Because the last 9 months have been hell. Not just financially, though that's been awful, but watching James hurt, watching him try to call you and you don't answer, watching him look at baby clothes and realize you'll never meet Robert. I did that. I destroyed his relationship with his mother because I was insecure and petty and cruel. She was crying now, hard enough that I worried it would affect her blood pressure. And then you were here anyway. After everything I did, after how I treated you, you still came. You still held my hand through labor. You're still here. And I don't understand why. Because I'm his grandmother, I said simply. And because despite everything, I raised James to be a good man. He made mistakes. You made mistakes. But Robert deserves better than to be born into a family fractured by pride and hurt. Can you forgive me? I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had called me useless, who had kicked me out of her house, who had made my 70th birthday one of the worst days of my life. I don't know, I said honestly, but I can try. For Robert, we can try to build something new. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I don't need you to make it up to me. I need you to be a good mother, to raise Robert with kindness and respect, to teach him that family matters. That's how you make it up to me. The nurses brought Robert back, clean and swaddled. I held him while Victoria slept, exhausted from labor. I sat in the rocking chair by the window and looked down at this tiny miracle. Your parents made some mistakes, I whispered to him. Big ones. And I made some mistakes too. I was so hurt that I let it harden me. But you're getting a fresh start, Robert. Clean slate. And I'm going to make sure you grow up knowing that love doesn't mean being a doormat, but it also doesn't mean holding grudges forever. James came back at 8 p.m., showered and rested. He found me still holding Robert, still rocking. Mom, you've been holding him for 3 hours. I know. I'm making up for lost time. About the rent. We'll talk about it later, not today. Mom, I need to tell you something. We didn't spend all our savings on lifestyle. We used most of it paying back the people we borrowed from to try to buy the house. When you outbid us, we still owed the money. We've been paying off those debts all year. That's why we've been so broke. I processed this. They hadn't been reckless. They'd been responsible, paying back loans even when it hurt. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was ashamed. Because I didn't want you to know how badly we'd messed up. We took out personal loans from Victoria's parents, from my college roommate, from anyone who would lend us money. And when the house sale fell through, we still had to pay them back. We've been paying $1,500 a month in loan payments on top of the rent. $1,500 in loan payments, plus $4,000 in rent, on his residence salary of about $5,400 a month after taxes. They'd been living on less than $1,000 a month for everything else. Jesus, James. I know. It's been impossible. But we did it. We paid everyone back. The last payment went through yesterday. We're finally clear. And the $8,000 you saved? We wanted to have something for when Robert came. For diapers and formula and doctor visits. We didn't want to be completely broke when he was born. I looked down at Robert, sleeping peacefully in my arms. His parents had sacrificed everything for 9 months. They'd struggled, they'd learned, they'd grown. Maybe it was time for me to grow too. James, I need to tell you something. Okay, the rent money. All $36,000 you've paid me over 9 months. I haven't touched it. His eyes widened. What? It's been sitting in a separate account. I didn't spend it. I couldn't. It felt wrong. Then why did you make us pay it? Because you needed to learn that actions have consequences. That you can't treat people badly and expect them to save you. But I never intended to keep it. I was testing you, seeing if you would step up. And you did. I don't understand. I'm giving it back. Not all at once, but I'm going to set up a trust for Robert. $36,000, plus the $80,000 I've already saved for his college fund. $116,000 waiting for him when he turns 18. Your 9 months of struggle will become his future. James started crying. Mom, I don't know what to say. Say you'll be a better father than you've been a son. Say you'll raise Robert to respect people, to value relationships more than money, to understand that family means showing up even when it's hard. I promise. I swear to you, I promise. Victoria woke up and saw us both crying, holding Robert between us. What happened? My mother, James said, his voice breaking, just taught me the greatest lesson of my life. and I almost lost her because I was too stupid to appreciate what I had. I handed Robert to Victoria and stood up. I should go. Let you three have time as a family. Mom, wait, James said. Tomorrow. Can you come back tomorrow? And maybe you could come over next week? Help us set up the nursery? Be part of this? I looked at them, at my son, who had finally learned humility, at Victoria, who had learned the cost of cruelty, at Robert, who was innocent of all of it and deserved a grandmother in his life. I'll come back tomorrow, I said, and we'll talk about the nursery. And James, the lease. When it expires in 3 months, we'll discuss new terms, fair terms, family terms. You mean? I mean that you're good tenants who've paid on time and maintained the property, and good tenants deserve good landlords. We'll figure it out. I drove home at 10 p.m., exhausted but lighter than I'd felt in a year. Robert was here, safe, healthy, perfect. And maybe, just maybe, we could all heal together. The revenge had felt good for a while, but forgiveness, real, earned, hard-won forgiveness, felt better. 3 months after Robert was born, the lease expired. I sat at my kitchen table with James and Victoria, the new lease agreement between us. Robert was in his carrier, sleeping peacefully, making those tiny baby sounds that had become the soundtrack of my life. The new rent will be $2,800 a month, I said, below the original rate. A 2-year lease this time, not 1 year. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Helen, why? After everything we put you through? Because you're family. And because you've proven you can handle responsibility. You paid every month on time, even when it nearly broke you. You maintained the property. You learned. We don't deserve this, James said quietly. Maybe not, but Robert deserves stability. And frankly, I'm tired of being angry. Being a grandmother is more fun. We signed the new lease. As James and Victoria left, Victoria turned back at the door. Helen, would you like to come to dinner next Sunday? Nothing fancy, just the 4 of us. I'd like that. After they left, I sat in the silence of my house, holding the signed lease. The house that had been a weapon had become something else. A bridge, a way back to family. The following Sunday, I arrived at their house at 6 p.m. My house, technically, but it didn't feel like that anymore. It felt like theirs, like home. Victoria had cooked. The table was set. Robert was in a bouncy seat, wide awake and watching everything with curious eyes. I made pot roast, Victoria said nervously. I know it's James's favorite. I used your recipe, the one from the birthday party. The birthday party where she'd kicked me out. We both knew what she was doing, reclaiming that moment, making it right. I'm sure it will be delicious, I said. It was. We ate and talked about normal things. Robert's feeding schedule, James's new rotation at the hospital, Victoria's plans to go back to work part-time when Robert turned 6 months old. It felt ordinary, peaceful, like a real family dinner. After Robert fell asleep, Victoria made coffee, and we sat in the living room. I've been thinking about something, Victoria said. About what you said in the hospital. About making it up to you by being a good mother. Yes? I want Robert to know the real story. Not now, obviously. But when he's old enough to understand, I want him to know that I was cruel to you, that you set boundaries, that we struggled and learned. I don't want him to grow up thinking relationships are easy or that you can treat people badly without consequences. That's wise, I said, and I want to apologize. Really apologize. Not because I need something from you, but because I need you to hear it. I was wrong. I was cruel. I called you useless when you were anything but. I kicked you out on your birthday because I was threatened by your relationship with James, and I'm sorry, truly, deeply sorry. I looked at this young woman who had caused me so much pain, who was now a mother herself, who was learning what it meant to love someone more than yourself. I forgive you, I said. And I meant it. The months passed. I fell into a routine of visiting twice a week, holding Robert while Victoria showered, teaching her the tricks I'd learned when James was a baby, watching my grandson grow. On his 3-month birthday, James handed me an envelope. What's this? Open it. Inside was a check for $10,000. We've been saving, James explained. It's partial repayment for the down payment you gave us years ago. The $100,000, we want to pay you back, all of it, eventually. James, that was a gift. It was. But we want to earn our way. We don't want to owe you anything except love and respect, so please, take it. Let us do this." I took the check, not because I needed the money, but because I understood what they were really giving me: their pride, their independence, their proof that they had grown. 6 months after Robert was born, Victoria went back to work part-time. She asked if I would babysit 2 days a week. "I could put him in daycare," she said, "but I'd rather he was with you, if you want to." "I'd love to." Those Tuesdays and Thursdays became my favorite days, just me and Robert, reading him books, singing him songs, telling him stories about his grandfather, about his father as a boy, about the life that came before him. One Tuesday afternoon, Victoria came home early. She found me asleep on the couch, Robert asleep on my chest, both of us breathing in sync. She took a photo. Later, she had it framed and gave it to me. "For your wall," she said, "so you remember that you were never useless, you were always essential." On Robert's first birthday, they threw a party, a real party, with balloons and cake and family. Victoria's parents came, some of James's medical school friends, neighbors. And when it came time to sing Happy Birthday, Victoria pulled me to the front. "Before we sing, I want to say something. A year ago, this family was broken, fractured by my cruelty and James's weakness. But there's someone here who showed us what real strength looks like. Helen, you set boundaries when we deserved them. You held firm when we needed to learn, and you forgave us when we'd finally earned it. You're not just Robert's grandmother. You're the foundation of this family. And we love you." Everyone clapped. I held Robert on my hip and blew out his candle with him, tears running down my face. Later, after everyone had left and I was helping clean up, James pulled me aside. "Mom, there's something I need to tell you. I saw your estate lawyer at the hospital last month." My heart sank. "James, he told me you'd removed me from your will last year, that everything was going to charity." I was hurt and angry. "I know, and you had every right to be. But Mom, I don't want your money. I never did. I want you. I want Robert to grow up with his grandmother. I want to call you when I have a bad day. I want to share the good moments and the hard ones. The money doesn't matter. It never did." "I've been thinking about that," I admitted, "about changing it back." "Don't. Keep it the way it is. Leave your estate to charity, to causes that matter to you." Victoria and I talked about it. We want to earn our own way, build our own wealth. And when we're successful, we'll donate in your name. Continue your legacy the right way. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Just promise me one thing." "What?" "That you'll be around for a long time. That you'll see Robert grow up. That you'll be at his graduations and his wedding and all the moments that matter. That's what I want from you. Not money. Just you." I hugged my son for the first time in over a year. Really hugged him. "I promise," I whispered. "I'll be here." 2 years after that terrible birthday party, James and Victoria bought their first house. A real house this time, not a rental. They'd saved carefully, lived frugally, built their credit. They didn't ask me for help with the down payment. They earned it themselves. On moving day, I came over to help pack. As we were loading boxes into the truck, Victoria found something in the back of a closet. It was the birthday cake, the German chocolate cake I'd brought to that disastrous party 2 years ago, still in its box, frozen in the back of their freezer, forgotten. "Oh my God," Victoria said, "I can't believe we still have this." "Throw it away," I said. "That day is over." "No," she said. "I want to keep it, as a reminder of who we were and who we became." She put it in a special cooler for the move. A year later, on my 73rd birthday, Victoria surprised me. She'd made a German chocolate cake, from scratch, using the recipe I'd used for that long-ago birthday. "This time," she said, "we're celebrating you, the right way." My family sang Happy Birthday. James, Victoria, Robert, who was now 3, and singing off-key. It was perfect. Messy and loud and imperfect and perfect. As I blew out the candles, I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago, so hurt, so angry, so determined to teach them a lesson. I had taught them a lesson. But they'd taught me one too. That forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, that boundaries don't mean abandonment, that sometimes love means letting people struggle so they can learn to stand. And that family isn't about who shows up when times are easy. It's about who shows up after they've learned why they should. My name is Helen Patterson. I am 73 years old. 3 years ago, my daughter-in-law called me useless and kicked me out of her house on my birthday. So I bought that house, and I charged them market rent, and I watched them struggle, and then I watched them grow. Today, I'm Robert's grandmother. I babysit twice a week. I go to family dinners. I'm loved and respected and valued. Not because I'm useful, but because I'm me. And that's enough. To anyone reading this who has been called useless, who has been taken for granted, who has been treated like they don't matter, you have the right to set boundaries. You have the right to demand respect. And you have the right to let people face the consequences of their actions. But you also have the right to forgive when they've truly learned, to rebuild when it's earned, to choose love over bitterness when the time is right. Stand up for yourself, draw the lines that need to be drawn, and then, when people prove they've changed, give them the chance they've earned. Not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. What would you have done in my situation? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonated with you, like the video and subscribe for more real-life stories. Remember that you are never useless. You are valuable simply because you exist. Until next time,